11 million people displaced, 4 million refugees, 250,000 dead, all in the last 4 years. What's happened to Syria's people? Pro-democracy protests erupted in March 2011 in line with the Arab Spring, and Syrian security forces responded with violent crackdowns. Protests spread nationwide, demanding Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad step down. He refused, and the violence increased. By 2012, Syria had descended into a full-blown civil war, and its people started to flee. In January 2012, 9,500 Syrians were registered as refugees. Just 6 months later, that number reached 82,000. And a year after that, 1.4 million Syrians were refugees and 90,000 people had been killed in the conflict. As the war raged on, the opposition attracted hardline Islamist rebels and extremist groups, and Islamic State became a powerful force in Syria. The militant jihadist group has taken over 1/3 of the country and has carried out hundreds of public executions, mass killings, and beheadings. Syria's civilians find themselves at the mercy of various groups. The UN has found evidence that all sides of the conflict have committed war crimes, including murder, torture, and rape. And the Syrian government has been accused of using barrel bombs and chemical weapons.
There's no indiscriminate weapons. When you shoot, you aim. And when you aim at terrorists in order to protect civilians. Again, if you're talking about casualty, that's war. You cannot have war without casualty.
More than 250,000 people have been killed in the conflict so far. And on top of all the brutality, Syrians have lost their livelihoods. The UN says 4 out of 5 Syrians live in poverty, while the country's education and social welfare systems are in a state of collapse. Unemployment and inflation are soaring, and Syria's currency has lost 90% of its value since the beginning of the crisis. And most parts of Syria only have electricity for a few hours a day, if at all. So, where do they go? The conflict has displaced half of Syria's 22 million people. More than 4 million people have fled, mostly to neighboring countries Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. The European Council plans to increase humanitarian aid to these countries, and the EU plans to resettle thousands of refugees.
Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here.
Germany alone expects to take in up to 1 million asylum seekers this year. Many are expected to be Syrian. More than 500,000 Syrians have applied for asylum in Europe since the start of the conflict, and that number is increasing sharply. Syrians accounted for 62,000 new asylum applications in September alone. The UN says this could be just the tip of the iceberg. The flow of refugees will continue to grow unless governments work together to end the Syrian civil war.